Hello everybody, welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. My name is Suj.
And my name is James.
It's a Monday, and this week is a mixer-rooney.
It is, yeah, we're doing a special European week this week on our Patreon network, where we're going to be focusing on 5 stories across the continent, which will start with a look at Barcelona and some of their finances today. Which means we're bringing...
lack of.
Oh, look, your phone's going off.
Isn't it
That's
just?
Another YouTube copyright strike. Which means we're bringing our Patreon content to the front of house this week to show you what we normally do behind the paywall. And every Monday, we do our Patreon Q&A, which is basically a free-for-all where our patrons via our Slack community channel, Pod Questions, can ask us absolutely anything they like. I tend to not look at the questions, so can react impulsively, if you will, to some of these questions. And there will be FPL stuff, there'll be non-FPL stuff. I don't know what's coming. It's basically a little bit of an extension of the normal Game Week Review podcast on a Monday, because we don't get to cover many questions on that podcast anymore. So this becomes... We normally cover every question there enough, basically.
Yeah, it's been getting harder as we've had more patrons, but I would say it's an extension, but we don't get to do Q&A as much on the main pod now. And there is a variety of stuff at the moment, obviously, with there being no football. It's quite different in terms of the questions that we've got asked at the moment, because there's no football. Probably, I wouldn't say indicative of a regular week, but there is a bit more FPL when the season's ongoing as well. And it's always a little bit more fun. I think there's a feeling that because it's in the closed garden of patrons only, people can ask anything they want. And I suppose we will choose.
Sometimes they do.
If
anything.
If it's a Q&A that's going out to the public, we'll pick and choose the questions to not cross any lines. And at the moment, obviously, there are a lot of non-football stories that should be making more headlines than they probably are. And yeah, politics might get mentioned, but let's see. I haven't been through all the questions other than to kind of have a scan of how many. There's enough that is worth one show. We're going to get to all of them.
Is there stuff that we can't cover?
I haven't looked at it.
Oh, right, okay.
Yet. And yeah, I'm sure there's going to be some FPL related stuff as well. But let's just jump straight into it, and we're going back to last week, Monday. So people need to kind of bear in mind, we get asked questions throughout the week, they build up and then we answer them. So sometimes they can get irrelevant, but not always. Javo, what is the most protracted, annoying transfer saga of recent seasons? The Jesse Lingard to West Ham one is certainly up there. So much so that I think fans don't, like, all the fans are like, sod it now.
Are you going to buy Jesse Lingard?
Not bothered. You can't buy him because he's a free agent.
Can you sign him?
Isn't it as straightforward as he wants this much money? We clearly don't want to pay him what he wants, because otherwise we would have signed him. And so he clearly has an idea of how much he wants, and we don't think he's worth that much, and so it's not going to happen. But what is more complicated in this transfer saga than money? There's nothing else to it. There's no, add-ons, clauses. I don't think he's going to end up at West Ham, because I think if he was, it would have been done by now.
Talking about maybe even going to the MLS, aren't they? It's too early for that for him, surely, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean...
He's still got plenty to offer in our league, I think.
Yeah. It's up there as one of the on-offs. It's so disappointing, because that 6 months, not just for West Ham fans, but for football fans, we saw a great player. I mean, he worked his way back into the international fold, mate.
Yes.
He was playing games for England.
Well, he was outstanding for you.
And then he's gone and wasted another year and is faffing about again this summer. It's like, do you want to play football or don't you want to play football? And I think the overriding emotion is now what's driving his decisions.
From the business side as well, go back 12 months. You have to look back on it and reflect, why did Manchester United not take money for him? Because it was there. We know that West Ham offered to buy him last summer.
I think he might have been sold a dream by Ollie that didn't materialise. Stay because I want to keep you. I can understand him staying because it's his boyhood club and he's been there since he's a kid and he wants to get back into the team. But he was sold a dream.
The one that's annoying me at the moment, and my fellow Spurs fans will agree, is the Jed Spence.
again,
it's every day. It's going to happen. Highly likely it's going to happen. But what's holding that up is supposedly Middlesbrough want, if you believe the ITK is online, they're saying Middlesbrough want like an add-on when he makes his Premier League debut. They want an add-on when he makes his Champions League debut. Like, those are two where I just look at it and go, just ask for a bigger fee in the first instance. He's going to make them 2 debuts, isn't he? There are extra stuff like they want an add-on if he plays for England. They want an add-on if Tottenham win a trophy. You're not getting your money for that, are you? That's fine. But it seems like Tottenham have agreed the front-up fee, but they can't agree on the add-ons. He wants to go to Tottenham. He's obviously not going to stay at Middlesbrough. It doesn't look like any other parties are interested at the moment in terms of trying to buy Jed Spence. Nottingham Forest have gone elsewhere, where they've signed Nico Williams now from Liverpool to play on that side. They've also bought Omar Richards to play on the left-hand side as well. So Forest have moved on. There's literally no other team getting linked with buying Jed Spence at the moment. It looks like it's going to happen. It's just bits in the middle that are holding it up. That's frustrating.
Transfers these days. The thing is, like, players, you can get gazumped when you're faffing about like this.
Yeah, maybe Barcelona might put a bid in. Who knows?
Well, they obviously are in a different financial situation, but Arsenal might have thought they were close to Martinez, and Manchester United have come in and
he could still go to either.
I think Crystal Palace thought
Frankie
they
de
had
Jong,
Downs.
We're going to talk about that later as well.
Saying, sod it, we'll pay it. And at that low level of money, it's not like we're talking, no one's going to come in and swoop a 70, 80 million pound transfer necessarily. But at 10s and 15s and 20s, anyone can come in and say, fine, sod it, we'll pay it. Deal's done. Those kind of deals can get done.
Well, Raphinha was going to Arsenal, was going to Chelsea, he's now going to Barcelona. If Barcelona can't find the money, might still end up at Chelsea, although we think the deal might have been agreed last night, where Barcelona have appeared to up their money. Frankie de Jong, we're going to speak about later on the Patreon pod. Like, that's been going on every day for how long? And it's going to be Ronaldo over the next month or so as well, I suppose.
Lee Sherwood. I'm new to all this. He's probably a new patron, so
welcome,
thank you for welcome to joining up, and welcome. And this is FPL. He's got Chilwell, Cancelo, TAA, Ben White, and he's considering the last spot for 5 million. Doherty, still injured, and what if Spence comes in, brackets. Cucurella might end up at City. Matty Cash. Is Romero a safer option? I mean, 5 million. I
wouldn't go for Romero. It's a safe.
I just think at 4 million, there's a couple of options, and see what you do with the money.
Kieran Trippier in there as
Trips,
well.
I think, is a great 5
million. It might
million.
be that he wants to start all these guys. So it's well and good going. Yep, Nico Williams, not in the Forest now, brilliant. But do you want to play him every week? So you're probably leaning more to a back 3 or a back 4. So from those, Doherty's not injured, by the way. He's training. It's over. He rejoined training earlier than most of the rest of the squad to recover from his injury. As far as I'm aware, he's fit and ready. He's travelled to Korea. He wouldn't have travelled to Korea if he was still injured. So he's available to play. Obviously, he's one. Again, go back to Jed Spence, is probably, if Jed Spence doesn't sign for Tottenham, then Doherty could well start the season. But we know Tottenham 100% are looking to buy a right-sided wing-back. Trippier at Newcastle is another name to throw in. Yes, Matty Cash at Villa, they've got a great opening start. There are a number of players. I don't think I'd be buying a centre-back like a Romero or Gabriel.
Nah. Do you know who's 5 million? I'm very loath to mention him, but Creswell's 5 million. The thing with him, you know he's on set pieces and that, but then looking at it, he's never scored big. He scored 120, 130 points this season. He's never clocked at 150, but he is on set pieces. If we had a decent enough run, you might consider it. But I just think the others that you've mentioned,
I'd prefer to buy Cresswell than Romero, I think.
Yeah,
if you're thinking longer term. The thing is, and again, we spoke about it on the pods last week, because of the unlimited and stuff, a lot of people are going to end up wildcarding quite early. With Cresswell's fixtures, you're better off looking at like Matty Cash or something, I think.
Agreed.
Cash is probably, because of the fixtures, if you're looking really early, probably the one, I think. But that would be based on wildcard. Now, they've got a rough period, sort of 4 to 7, I think, where you might be a bit uncomfortable with it. But of course, you can make a transfer and move the player as well.
Darren, auto close. Daryl Davis. This is a classic. None of the above, because there's better options at those price points, mate.
Romero.
Yeah.
No, That's difficult to say, and I can answer that a bit better in a couple of weeks. Obviously, the deal for Clement Lenglet is coming on loan from Barcelona, left-footed centre-back, but can cover both of the two positions. So
Dyer's going to play.
When we do,
Davis is not. So that's a straightforward.
When we do our Tottenham podcast on Thursday, I think at that point I can come back to you and say it looks like he's going to be used as a left-sided centre-back.
It's a pointless question because if 65% of people are going to own Perisic, you're not going to double up on Spurs defence. In my opinion, so this is pointless. Just buy Perisic and be done with it.
It's a piss-take question, isn't it?
Dan L also taking the piss. How do I sign up for this Patreon thing? I think he's just trying to help us sell our page.
I think you're there, Dan.
Yeah. Is Nathan Patterson a decent option as a fifth choice defender? I can only see Coleman as competition. I think that's fair. I think there's still confusion about why they bought him if they were never going to play him. But if he's going to step up and be first choice, then he's in at 4 million.
He's definitely going to take Seamus Coleman's place in the team. Whether that's going to happen prior to game week 1 or in game week 1, I don't think we can answer at the moment. It might be more clues from pre-season. He would be very, very interesting if it looks like he's going to start as first choice. And I think he's one where once he goes in, he'll stay in. I think he won't be, he's dipped in and out. Once he gets the shirt, he'll keep the shirt. He's very highly rated. He's staggering that he didn't appear for Everton at all after they spent money to buy him from Rangers in a financial year where they couldn't really afford to make signings. A very, very strange one. But I guess it was Benitez's signing, wasn't it? Then he was sacked like the following week. And Lampard really leaned on Seamus Coleman's experience and leadership, which was quite important for Everton in the running. He's going to take the shirt, but I mean, if you ask me to lock my team in right now, I'd probably more go with Nico Williams in that position.
Next question from Real Debacle FC's pointless. Will Prime Minister Boris make it to game week 1? Well, he hasn't. Although he'll probably, I think he'll still be Prime Minister when we get to game week 1.
Yes.
I think he'll still be there. No, I mean, I've got no love for him and I'm glad he's gone. But there's like a small amount of respect for his fight. Like the way he has just clung on and been like, screw you all. You got to respect the guy's hustle. But
have you?
That's some real screw you, I'm just going to stick it out kind of mindset. Real, like he believes in himself more than anyone I think I know.
It was a little bit like a manager waiting for his payoff, wasn't it?
Yeah, completely. But he's gone now. So.
Can we just say, although it's obviously, and I'm in complete agreement, I had to go. Whatever comes in next might be worse.
Well,
have to bear that in mind.
Yeah, conversation.
That's possible, isn't it?
John, did you find out whether the guy you interviewed died or not? Now, this is referring to an old story about an interview I was doing for someone for a job at work, that his internet died 20 minutes in when he was telling the story about how someone had died at work. If you sign up to our Patreon, you can go back to last week's Q&A and listen to it. But the guy, the question's wrong. The guy I interviewed hadn't died. His internet had died. He's perfectly healthy and fine.
You're certain of that?
Yes.
Okay, that's good.
Well, he was, right, we checked in on him the day, like 10 minutes after.
You probably should have clarified that last week.
He was all good. Gary Shep, if you were Prime Minister, what footballers would be in your cabinet and what would their role be? I.e. Antonio would be Minister for Goal Celebrations.
We've got to have Marcus Rashford in there, haven't we?
Yeah. He'd be Education Secretary. He's got the kids at education at art. Well, he's worried about their school meals, but that's all incumbent into
like,
education.
To go back to Darren's question, Eric Dyer and Ben Davis, intelligent boys. We'd have them on board.
Based on what?
They're just intelligent boys. Dyer's done stuff where he's spoke about non-football subjects.
He's also lost his shit and jumped into the crowd and decided to throw a punch.
That also did happen, yeah. Maybe not then.
Yeah, I'm not sure who else is particularly... but what do we need ministers for that we don't have? Not like your regular stuff. Who's particularly good at anything else?
What we're saying, we need a player for to help fans with away travel and stuff like that. Is that what we need?
Who can speak a lot of languages that we can have as
Eric Dyer.
International foreign minister?
Oh, someone who speaks fluent in so many languages. I'm trying to think.
I'd get David Ginola to be foreign minister.
Because he's worth it?
Because he'll schmooze everyone.
He's still...
he can get his way with everyone. David Ginola. Yeah, I think so.
I got nothing to add on that. It's Eric Dyer, Ben Davis, get him in.
I don't see that.
All right, fair enough.
We have a question from Matt Lowe. Suj, is James getting carried away with Spurs' expectations as most likely challenge for the title when they were simply the least terrible team in the race for fourth? Would you be surprised if they finished 7th or 3rd? So I think the question's wrong in the sense that I don't think you think you're going to challenge for the title.
Do you think I got carried away?
I think
what you said to our Tottenham podcast
is
last week.
That you require City and Liverpool to flop to be in consideration,
and us to do amazing.
And but the thing is, I agree with you that you're the most likely to come 3rd at the moment.
Subject to what Chelsea are going to do.
Of course, yeah. But so I don't think there's a carried awayness there. I don't think anyone's in any doubt that City are favourites, Liverpool second favourites, and then it's really a race. But if United have added Christian Eriksen, they're gonna maybe add Martinez. They got other players on the radar that they want to buy. The defender they bought, or what's his name, begins with M just now.
The left back from Feyenoord, Tyrell. I forgot his surname. It's Tyrell.
So they're going to add
Malacia.
That's it. But I don't think you're getting carried away. Would I be surprised if you finished 7th? For you to finish 7th would require some sort of implosion. So you lose your first 4 games, Conte loses his shit, quits, and then someone downs tools. Or look, Kane has had ankle problems. If he gets injured and is out for 6-7 months of the season, and then Richarlison throws his towards it's not impossible. None of these things are impossible when you have characters like Conte, Richarlison, Kane's ankles and that kind of thing as risks. But I'd be more surprised if you finish 7th than if you finish 3rd. So I don't think there's carried away.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that. Like I said on that podcast last week that give me 3rd now and I'd be absolutely delighted. I think the gap to the top 2 are just too good at the moment. Everything would have to fall into place for Tottenham to actually be title contenders, never mind actually win the league. So I think it's too far at the moment. I think we still have weaknesses. Like if we don't buy a right wing back, I know Doherty was good towards kind of the March period last year and stuff, but we definitely do need an upgrade there. There's concern about the creativity when we need to break down teams with low blocks and stuff. Some of that might be filtered out by dropping Kane deeper and playing the other 3 attackers when we need a goal later in the game and stuff, as kind of like Liverpool changed to 4-2-3-1 late in games this season. We might do something similar this season. No. Am I getting carried away? No. Do I right now, do I think Tottenham will finish top 4 again? Yeah, I have every reason to be confident.
Matt has got carried away, though, himself, and he's placed a bet on Manchester United to win the league. So.
Okay, right. I would
and he says...
I'd cash out. I'd cash out now.
Jarvo, as a general rule, what do you think is more worth it for game week 1? 4.5 million defender with $500,000 in the bank, i.e. Ben White and $500,000, or a 5 million defender and nothing in the bank, Matty Cash or Trippier, for example. This is an interesting one because I think it depends on the rest of your squad. Like, ask yourself the question player by player, what's your escape everywhere? And if there's an escape that you might need money for, then keep that $500,000. Because, a 0.1 increase at the start of the season, it may as well be a 0.5 increase because you don't have 0.1s and 0.2s in the bank.
What happens is, and you see this every year, particularly on Twitter, a lot of people say, I really want to keep 0.5 in the bank before game week 1. And I always think that's a target every year as well. But what invariably happens is the closer you get, that 0.5 gets put somewhere for most people. Now, if you can hold your nerve and keep it in the bank, it's great because we have to factor in, if you suffer a price drop early on and you've got no money in the bank, that price drop is effective as 0.5 rather than 0.1 because you can't move it to anywhere else bar 0.4 down, right? Mm-hmm. So the effective loss is obviously worse if you don't keep that money in the bank. But this year with the pricing and stuff and so many good options, I think most people want to push the boundaries on it as much as possible. So at the moment, I don't have the money in the bank. And it's not to say that I won't start with the money in the bank. I think to relate it to the exact scenario given, are you happy to play Ben White every week? It's impossible to answer without knowing the rest of your squad, but just sit there and ask yourself, if I have to play him every week, am I okay with that? And if the answer is yes, save the money.
Lauren wants to know who you would rather vote for as Prime Minister. I think I know the answer.
Are you running for it, by the way?
Jose or Sol?
Is that a real question?
It's a real question.
That's so easy, Jose by a mile.
Yeah.
Can I just say
that I'd trust Jose over Sol.
Jose is an intelligent man.
Yeah, he just loves himself a little too much.
He's a dislikable arsehole, but he knows his onions. He's a very clever man. He would probably make a better prime minister than the guy who's leaving the post, I would suggest. The other person's just delusional. Yeah, no way whatsoever. So that's quite an easy one. I mean, the prime minister's not necessarily there to be liked anyway. I don't think. How many prime ministers do you look back on and go, oh, they were generally loved by everyone? Like, it doesn't happen, right? So would a Mourinho get the job done and stuff? Yeah. I mean, would I rather Mourinho sat there than Johnson? I mean, there's every case to say yes, actually. Yeah. Why are you not running, by the way?
I haven't been an MP or any of that kind of stuff. You can find anything and everything if you go back through people's videos of all sorts of shit these days.
Oh, you'd be in trouble.
Yeah, I'd be in trouble. If this podcast is trouble enough to exclude me from running for prime minister.
Probably. We could delete it all.
Yeah, I think we probably should.
Okay.
Even like right now, ex-Chancellor Rishi Sunak's favourite by quite a way, although Liz Truss said she was going to run this morning. I don't know if you've seen the videos, like all sorts of stuff of him when he was younger and that.
This is what I'm saying. It might be worse. I'm not celebrating anything. It was the girl who did the campaign video. She had like Oscar Pistorius in there.
I don't know if you've seen this video from when he was younger. No, I'll play it on here.
Can we do that?
Yeah.
We actually press play then, Suj.
I'm trying, mate.
And you probably need to turn it up.
It's maximum volume.
Upper class. I have friends who are, working class, but I'm not working class, but.
Because I've got friends that are aristocrats. I've got friends that are upper class. I've got friends that are working class. Actually, well, not working class. Come on, man. I think he was probably 18, 19 at
Rishi's
the time.
useless as well.
Yeah.
Sorry.
They're all useless, mate.
Yeah,
all useless. Gary wants to know, have you ever employed someone that constantly whinged? In my old company, we did it like this. And if so, how quickly would you send them back to Inter Milan?
He's talking about Lukaku.
Yeah, of course. But just the question without the Lukaku piece, I don't think they're ever, because normally if people are leaving and coming on board, there's something they didn't like at the old place. And so people are leaving with like a negative mindset towards the old place. I've not really ever had that. I've not really ever had that.
That's got to be one of the worst transfers of all time now, isn't it? Yeah. Lukaku to Chelsea.
Yeah.
And the fact they've had to bomb him out back on loan and they're getting like $6 million a year for the loan.
Put it this way, here's an interesting question for you.
That's with no obligation to buy, by the way.
What's the worst transfer, Lukaku or Pepe?
Wow, that's a great question.
It's 15 million more for Lukaku they paid, give or take.
Yeah, but if Lukaku has a good year in Italy, they'll probably get 50, 60 back next summer or something, I would guess, if they really don't want him. It could be as well with Lukaku. It might be that a different manager's in charge next year and he comes back and does well for Chelsea. But I feel like nearly every Chelsea fan I've heard from are like, get him out of my club. Pepe was just wild, wasn't it? It was like every day in the media, they were stressing about where they're going to pay the asking price for Wilfried Zaha, who we knew was desperate to go to Arsenal. It was like, are Arsenal going to pay the 60 million? They're going to pay the 60 million. Every day that sum was going on. And then it was like, oh, they've dropped 70 for someone that, let's be honest, most people hadn't heard of, is what happened. And it was a flop, wasn't it? But it was a flop in the sense that if it had been bought for 15 million, and I'm not saying that's the right value for the player, then no one would speak about it. So the money spent on the player obviously hangs around the neck of a player, isn't it? It's what happens. And that's what's happened with Lukaku, that people, oh my God, they paid nearly 100 million for him. It's mad, isn't it, when you think back to that? This time last year, we're like, oh my God, they've got the player in that they can now win the title because he'll score the goals. Just not worked out. And he was their top goal scorer last year.
Chris Tellers has put a question in. It's a long one. Every now and then we get long ones, but they're actually just suggestions for a podcast. But I'm going to read it out because it does lead into... Yeah, recently news broke.
I'll go to the toilet.
Of City Football Group purchasing a minority stake in Palermo, which takes the group's club portfolio to a whopping 12 clubs, including City, New York City, Girona, Mumbai City, and more. and seemingly looking into further expanding this portfolio by seeking out a deal to acquire Brazilian club Bahia. Someone's going to tell me I pronounce that wrong.
Probably.
Bahia.
Bahia.
Okay.
Cheers, Nico.
Oh, yeah, I forgot we got
Thanks,
a Portuguese
guy, isn't it? Yeah.
And also standing out a move in the Netherlands. Enix Group used to own stakes in several clubs, including Slavia Prague, Basel, and Rangers, which were all sold off when they took full ownership of Spurs. There's also the Red Bull network. The owners of Leicester and Brighton have majority stakes in a couple of Belgian clubs.
Yep.
Those are just a few examples, of course. What are your thoughts on multi-club ownership model and its impacts on the future of the sport? It started off with talent acquisition and career pathways for players, but there's also potential opportunities for book balancing and FFP dodging under this model if it isn't already being done. Any chance of a future episode of Money in Football could center around this topic? So that's a very deep question, and does require an episode to look at it and consider it.
So there was
the guys at Brentford have got a stake in. They own the Danish club now,
yeah,
and so on.
There was a report over the weekend. Since when was that question submitted? I presume not in the last 2 days, probably a bit longer ago. There was a report over the weekend in one tabloid British newspaper that suggested that one Premier League club were being investigated for basically trying to get some of their wages down through one of their sister clubs and stuff. And I think people will hear that and will jump to the conclusion of Manchester City, I think, just because we know that sort of things happened in the past with like Mancini's bonus or something was paid through Emirates Airline or something. I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, consultancy
it wouldn't be Emirates,
gig
sorry.
in £100,000 for like 4 days' work.
That's
or
correct.
Dumb
That's what it was. Yes, I think it was like 1.5 million for like a week's work or something like that as a consultancy job. So that's one possibly to follow. And look, it was a sensationalized headline in a tabloid paper, so it's not necessarily accurate. Let's be honest. In terms of the model that City have got, though, I mean, City's obviously the lead brand. What is it? I just wonder how you'd feel as one of these other clubs. Like, what do Palermo think? As in, not that Palermo would have aspirations to necessarily be the biggest club in Italy, but you think, are we part run by Manchester City now?
I think if you're a smaller club and you can have, would I be happy to be owned by Man City and I was getting their B team in my first team? If you're a smaller club like that, I think you're looking at it and thinking you're going to get access to talent and players that you probably couldn't afford previously on loan deals and what have you. So depending on the size of the club and the aspirations of the club, like it wouldn't make sense for my club, West Ham, to be like that, obviously, because it doesn't work. But if you're a lower league club in one of the European leagues or what have you, it makes perfect sense to scale up and build up that way. I'm not.
It feels uncomfortable, is all I would say as a neutral.
I mean, there's a lack of regulation.
And listen, there's not to say that my club and other clubs won't follow this model and do that as well. It just feels a little uncomfortable.
Agreed.
What would suddenly happen if a legislation was brought in? I mean, City would probably get round it by having person X own Palermo, person Y own New York City, for example. They'd probably get around it that way. But like legislatively, I think one of the reasons to go back to Darren's point on Tottenham and ENIC having the other clubs, ENIC got away from it once Tottenham were getting back into European competition, because then there was an issue like we've seen with Red Bull. So Salzburg have had to go as Salzburg rather than Red Bull Salzburg, for example, in Europe, because you couldn't have two teams owned by the same, was conflicting. I think they were kept apart in the group stage draw of the Champions League, even though they're in different national associations. So it's conflicting, and that's why Tottenham ENIC binned the others once Tottenham got back into Europe. I don't know if that would be the same for City if say Palermo in 5 or 10 years got into the Champions League, whether that's something they'd have to rethink.
Yep. Gary Robinson, why are City selling Sterling? He's versatile, stretches the pitch, guaranteed goals. Is there not a danger that City look stodgy without him? 47 million, they're getting back what they paid.
I think Sterling wants to go, is more the point. He wants to play every week. He's 27 now. I mean, he plays half the minutes for Man City. I think he wants to be the man and play somewhere. And I think the feeling he's had playing for England over the last sort of 2 years or so, and the trust he's got from Southgate has kind of led into this as well, knowing that he can be the main man, and he could be at Chelsea. I mean, Raheem Sterling, from an FPL perspective, is 10 million. If he hits the ground running at Chelsea, he'll soon go from a differential to well owned when Chelsea come round to better fixtures.
He's a midfielder. He is a midfielder, isn't he?
Yeah. So I think it's more Sterling wanting to go. It was last year a contract. So City decided to let it go. It's not like they haven't got. I was see an interview at the weekend with Julian Alvarez, who's coming as well, saying actually he can play in a wide position. Spent 100 million for Grealish. People were unhappy with how much he played last year. You got Foden developing. It's unlikely Bernardo Silva will leave in this window unless Barcelona want to pull out another lever of financial money, which we'll talk about later on Patreon. So they've got players. I don't think it's a huge loss to City. Essentially, Alvarez is the replacement in terms of attacking number. Yep. And they're obviously going to change a little bit this year, aren't they? We're not going to see false nine so much with Haaland.
No. Geordie's FPL, which is Dan, says, who is Nico? What is Nico? And what's he doing at Planet FPL Towers?
Do you want to come on the pod? Off you go, Suj.
Nah, you go for this one.
Nico's my fucking lifesaver is what Nico is. Nico's a video editor. He's the brains behind everything that we do now. Not quite. No, he's our video editor and he's a superstar.
That was a wrong answer.
His European football knowledge is very good, which is helping me as well.
Also a wrong answer. He is cousin to a Wolves fullback. That's all we need to know.
That's also true.
That's his main role.
And it's not Johnny.
Being no questions or answers about Johnny today. Yeah, Nico's doing all the editing. Stian. Is the Q&A the only time that Such ever introduces a Patreon pod in the manner befitting our hard-earned cash? Okay, patrons, if they're moaning about the pods not being introduced in a sufficiently
You're proper lazy.
Loving way.
Suj is so lazy with his intros on Patreon.
Not this week I won't be.
No.
Because Stian's moaned. This is an official complaint. I feel like I'm in a performance review now.
Okay.
All right, patrons, you get full introductions this whole week. What are we doing today anyway? Barcelona.
Exactly.
Do you know what? I meant to mention that when we talked about, when the question Chris asked about City and club ownership and stuff. The one interesting thing with the Barcelona story that we are going to cover off later on the Patreon pod is seeing financial fair play being enforced with some teeth that it is in Spain that we feel is like a waste of time here. They are being held to account.
That's La Liga teeth, isn't it?
Yeah, La Liga teeth. But it is very interesting to see it in action when I feel that here it's just like whatever. Money talks.
I don't want to spoil anything for that pod.
If you were asked to sell Planet FPL, it says Dan, £3.50, Dan, to someone who... okay. We're not actually selling Planet FPL. If you were asked to sell Planet FPL to someone on what made it different to other pods and its USP, what would you say?
I would say
main pod or Patreon? Main pod.
I would say it's based on me and Suj probably being different to most other co-host podcasts.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the same USP for other pods. If
Just
you know what I mean, it's their USP is them, our USP is us, and so on and so on.
Yeah, that's not a criticism of any other podcast, by the way.
It's just
it's
horses for courses.
Yeah, I just think we're a little bit of a different vibe in terms of you are host, I am analyst, if you will. We're both a bit nuts as well, which we openly admit. Yeah. But Suj is actually real life clever, where I'm
Jake
not.
Humphreys and you're Michael Owen.
No, stop that.
He's an analyst.
Can you have a better example, please?
No, I was trying to find the worst possible pundit I could think of, and we came up with Michael Owen. Tom Hall has two quick questions. I don't have much of a bench. Would you recommend more of a bench because of the 5 subs? No idea.
No, I wouldn't stress about it. You're more likely to see 1 pointers this year. That's probably more the fear, isn't it? That your player's only going to get the 1 point rather than not off your bench at all. So actually, you'd make more of a case of the opposite. You probably don't need to go 3 deep on your bench as much, is the twist on it.
James, you mentioned the potential of Pochettino to Chelsea. When did you mention this?
I did on the
Ask
stream.
James.
I did on Friday.
The naked one or the clothed one?
Pochettino naked.
No. The naked stream.
Oh my god.
Story for another day.
The non-naked stream.
Go to YouTube. That wasn't a Patreon only.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
The Q&A was
Yeah,
Patreon only.
the Ask James was. Yeah.
Okay, don't.
I told the story, and it's about 7 minutes long. The story, so I'm not repeating it. Did you laugh your tits off though?
Well, I was like, where's this going? Because I had a bunch of DMs from people saying, "Tell James he's live," and I didn't see them till 6 p.m. So this is pointless, right? I didn't even log in, and then I messaged you and said, "I've got a bunch of DMs. I don't know what for," and you told me go and have a listen from minute 36 or something. Yeah, I did laugh. It was pretty funny.
The long and short of it was there was a live stream going on Friday, and I didn't know it was going on. Basically, what was the question again? Sorry.
Poch to Chelsea, but what would Poch to City work as Pep is leaving?
The question I was...
but that second part of that question from Tom
Pep's
is...
not leaving.
As Pep is leaving. Why?
People thought he was perhaps next year, but he's not now. No. I don't think. I'd be stunned. So that's off the table. Someone asked about where I saw Pochettino going next, and this is difficult to envisage. Someone correctly pointed out that if Eddie Howe bombs at Newcastle, for example, which doesn't... I think they're very happy with him at the moment, but if it went wrong, then that would open up and that would be an attractive job, obviously, because the financial power of them. I was just looking ahead and going, where can he go? It's also me knowing that he wants to be back in London. I mean, if Antonio Conte does leave Spurs in the next 6 months for whatever reason, there's every chance to be back at Tottenham. But there's a growing sense that it may even go beyond this season with Antonio Conte. And I really like Thomas Tuchel. I think he's a brilliant manager. There's just certain things happening there, and it's knowing that their model, that if it's going wrong, they will just change. Now, that model might be changing because the ownership's changed, so they may think completely differently. But it has worked for Chelsea just to go change. And I think there's a possibility that if Chelsea finished outside the top four this year, then next summer they would change. I also think it's a possibility that they've lost a lot of important players like Antonio Rudiger, and if they don't sort that out defensively, then they could have a dip this year. And I'd still make them favourites to finish in the top four as it stands. And I've also said that if they added properly, which Sterling is the first step of doing that, then they can possibly go on and challenge for the league and still be kind of best of the rest outside the top two. But I think if you looked at the managers now and went, something's going to go really wrong within the top six and someone's going to go, right now you'd argue he's the most likely. And I know that Pochettino wants to come back to London because his family are still here.
Harbour Boy, what current popular FPL Twitter strategy, no-brainer strategy, is most likely to turn out wrong when we look back on this season?
What FPL strategy is a no-brainer?
If people are thinking on Twitter right now is this is the way to go, it's going to turn out wrong.
Are we talking about a player?
I think we'll put it this way. I know this one's going to work out as a no-brainer because it's my strategy, which is template. But I did think about it over the weekend. It's like, if I make a conscious decision today, right now, which I have made, to just go with the template, I don't have to think about FPL for 4 weeks. I can just log in the hour before, figure out which is the most owned, and just go with it. Like, I don't think people realise how much time they can save by saying, sod it, let's just go with the template.
I suppose the one would be big at the back in terms of the potential attacking returns of these premium defenders. What if they all disappear? Which restructure, isn't it? I suppose the one that might be dangerous at the moment is those who are looking at, say, just the one premium. I spoke about this last week, the idea of just Salah. Are you happy for Salah just to cover you on the captaincy for the majority of the first sort of 6-7 weeks or so? But if it's going badly and he looks like he's underperforming, and he has had spells occasionally, not in the last 18 months or so, but he has had spells where you've gone, he don't look right, you know. But then what do you do with that? You move to Son, or you start sticking the armband on Diaz. You move the money about. You put Haaland in, whatever. So I don't think there's anything that I'd look at and go, "Well, that's in real danger of being massively wrong." The template will move. What the template is in game week 1 will not be the template in game week 7 or 8.
John, if Wolves get demoted, I think he means relegated, but
well, that's up to the Fossen family, maybe, isn't it?
What Slack channel will be the next big, busy channel. This is reference to the fact that we seem to have attracted quite a few people from the Midlands and Wolves fans into our Patreon, and they chat.
We have an unusually high number of Wolves patrons for whatever reason. I presume that's down to Bradley Parker. I don't know. But the Wolves channel, every day they're on it. It's arguably the most popular. We have on Slack, we have a team channel designated for each Premier League team.
You can ask questions to fans.
The Wolves one is like the busiest, just out of moaning and what are we doing, and like Fabio Silva's going on loan to Anderlecht, but they want him to sign a new contract before he goes. Like, but they need another forward, not letting one go. And the Tottenham one and the Arsenal one have potential for explosiveness. But I was saying this on my stream last week as well, that like I've removed the channels that the teams got relegated: Burnley, Norwich, Watford. We do have an EFL channel overall, but I was saying like if the Wolves won, if they got relegated, I couldn't take it down. Be uproar. Lose half our patrons, I think.
The end of Planet FPL, because we can't afford it anymore because we lost all our revenue because the Wolves fans have gone. Wolves.
We'd have to rename it Wolves and EFL or something.
Right, we've got a question coming in from Rob Pick that I'm going to answer with one very quick answer, but just know, Rob, that we'll answer it properly tomorrow. He says, what would be the best job for Lawrence Bassini to do? Wrong answers only. He is the guy that's looking to take over Birmingham City. We do have a Money in Football podcast tomorrow, which we do behind Patreon, so it will be available to all, and the topic is Birmingham City. Lawrence Bassini should open a waffle shop, James. That's what he should do. Desserts with syrup on top, but waffle shop owner is Lawrence Bassini.
This podcast tomorrow, and this is going to be available to everyone. Money in Football, it's a concept for a new idea that we're going to do on Patreon this year. Tomorrow's one will be open to everyone. It's going to be on Birmingham City. It's basically Suj going off on rants about financial stuff in football. And I gave Suj plenty of opportunity to decide the topic this week, and he took too bloody long. So I decided for him it's going to be Birmingham City.
We decided Birmingham.
Honestly, what is going on at that football club is it's going to be part very serious, but it's also going to be part funny as well tomorrow.
Yeah, he's a character and a half who's been involved at Watford. He's been involved at Bolton. He's been involved in football before and never successfully. So the stuff coming out of his mouth.
He's
as a fan.
The thing is, it's not just I heard in the paper he said this. He's been going on Talkshite.
Yeah.
And dropping.
Fighting.
Yeah, he's offering out Simon Jordan for fights, and there's crazy stuff going on.
Leisure. So I think there's probably another name. The username on our Slack channel is just Leisure.
Hi, Leisure.
Who's the best 5 million defender?
We've kind of done this, haven't we?
Tierney.
Yeah, Tierney's another name to throw in, yeah.
Yeah, assuming he's fit. I might go, if I was getting a 5 million defender, I think I'd go Trips, if I'm honest with you. I think he's got good upside. If he scores a goal or two or picks up an assist early doors, I think a lot of people flock to him, and I don't think his ownership will be too high. I'd probably go Trips, but they're all viable. They're all going to... I think if you buy one, have a bit of patience and hold it out for 3 or 4 weeks.
If the season was starting tomorrow, I'd arguably say Doherty. But I don't think that'll be my answer when the season starts.
No, because obviously Spence might come in and a lot of change.
Again, depends. Trippier first 2 all right. As we said, Matty Cash first few all right. Tierney's one, I think... The first 2 aren't as good as they look on paper. Like Palace and Leicester are not easy fixtures, but they do have a brilliant run up to sort of like game week 9 or so. So Tierney, is a decent. If he's fit, is a decent shout. But you know you're not going to get 38 games out of him. So he's part long term choice, but are you going to get 7-8 games out of him? I think if you're wild carding early, if you know in your mind you're going to wild card like game week 3 or game week 4, that just generally makes Arsenal assets less attractive.
Dan, with Sterling on his way to Chelsea and Jesus now at Arsenal, does Jack Grealish at the price of 7 million become more decent an option? Save a little bit of money on those at 8. Could be a bit of a differential. And non-FPL, do you think he'll have a better season? Because I do.
Yep. Yeah,
I think he'll have a better season, but I'm not going to go near him in FPL.
Yeah, I haven't ruled him out, actually. We know it's a historical... it doesn't mean it's going to happen for Jack Grealish season 2. To be fair, Johnny Pringle sat on Correspondent Week next year and said don't judge him till the second season comes around and stuff, and he was absolutely right. So very much eyes on it. I think with Sterling going, that's probably good news for him potentially as an asset. I think with Haaland, feed as well, is good. I see him becoming first choice this year. And listen, first choice at Manchester City does not equal 38 games. We know that. It probably equals 28 games, for example. But yes, I think he will become a regular this season. I think we're going to see potentially Foden play on the right a bit more, which might have a negative impact on Mahrez. Foden can comfortably play either side. We may also see Grealish at times play more centrally and play as a 10 position. I think there might be certain games where it's Rodri, Grealish and De Bruyne possibly, with perhaps Phillips and Gundogan in reserve. So look, let's see what we get from pre-season. We're going to get a slightly different Manchester City. I think most of us at the moment want to see what the potential impact is stylistically on Manchester City with Haaland coming in. And the week before the season starts, we get them to see them play Liverpool, right? So that's a huge, huge clue.
Yeah, I'm not sold on him at 7 million yet. That's not to mean I can't be, but there's certain players that I want to see it before I buy them. I think one of the things that Grealish did amazingly well at Villa was the outball that he was when they were counter-attacking. Like, you feed him the ball and he just sticks to him like glue, and he'll win a foul or he'll drink past you, and then you're done and he's in behind. The amount of opportunities City get to counter-attack is rare because they've just got the ball all the time. When they came to our place and he played the first half, we just double up on him. And I think he had a difficult season of adjusting to where he's not the main man and he's not the creative outlet, and he's not got acres of space to run into. And he's trying to be tricky and break teams down, and that's going to be the same again at City. And that's not to say he won't improve. I definitely take on board the point of Haaland.
No, but if they've got a focal point at the top, so there's a lot of focus in terms of what's the impact. Well, one impact might be that his presence, rather than dropping into kind of attacking midfield positions, his presence to lead the line constantly might open up more space for someone like Jack Grealish.
It could well do. Who else is there that plays his position? Foden, you'd say, plays left winger.
Yeah, and as I said, Alvarez can play wide.
Foden played a lot of games last year and he's only getting better. I mean, they didn't pay 100 million to leave him on the bench.
One of those two this year, I feel like it never really developed last year where any of the City attacking mids really stood out. I'm going to remove De Bruyne at the moment as obviously a premium player. But that cluster of Grealish, Foden, Mahrez, it never become... They're great to own. I'm pretty sure this year one of Grealish or Foden will be this season.
Javo, is Raphinha still an option if he stays at Leeds?
He's not going to.
So it's kind of pointless.
It's an absolute
Javo's planning to own him. Thinks he's a better asset if he's at Chelsea. Chelsea attacking mid at 6.5 million. I think he will be first choice there ahead of Ziyech and Hudson-Odoi and anyone else on that side. Yeah, I'm going to have that all day long. If he goes to Chelsea, you're having him, Raphinha.
No, not necessarily.
I think he's going to end up being one that a lot will go to.
By the way, he was going to go to Barcelona. And it was really interesting comments from Jesse Marsh. They had a friendly against Blackpool last Thursday night. Jesse Marsh spoke really openly about Raphinha and the fact he was back in training. They're going, I think, to Australia. I want to say on tour. Forgive me, I might have that wrong. It looks like he's not going to travel. But unlike a certain Portuguese superstar, he is turning up at the moment. He is making himself available to get himself fit. Leeds are facilitating that. They've got a deal agreed with Chelsea, but they know and understand that Raphinha wants to go to Barcelona, and they're going to try and help him do it. But understandably, from Leeds' perspective, Chelsea have offered X amount of money. They want Barcelona to match that. If Barcelona match that, he will go to Barcelona. He might find that he joins Barcelona and can't play for them. That's a off-topic subject. But no, I do think he'll end up at Barcelona.
FPL Tractor. Which non-standard FPL game do you like best? Differential League, Zombie League, Champions League, minus 56 are the ones I think that we run. I suppose it's a way of just saying, like, we do run other competitions for our Patreons that are non-standard. Zombie League.
Well, because it's dead and you don't have to think about it again.
All season about it.
No, the minus
56 is fun.
The minus 56 is fun. So what we basically do is me and Suj both individually pick basically a free hit team every week to compete against each other. But we call it the minus 56, so you would physically have to make 15 transfers. Therefore, you can't have somebody who was in your team the last week. So, for example, in game week 1, we probably wouldn't pick Erling Haaland because we probably definitely want him for game week 2. And you have to think a little bit like that. But I think it also raises our awareness for who do we think is going to do really well individually this week. And just psychologically, it triggers some things.
More
I
often
think
than not,
in
you're
the
trying to
thought
make sure you've
process.
got the best captain. And quite often we'll pile into blanket defence if you think a team's good for a clean sheet, that kind of thing. It all adds to a little bit of fun around the old FPL. Leisha with 2 questions. Odegaard versus Martinelli. Stats-wise, Odegaard creates a lot. With Jesus, now I think a lot of people, Jesus, because he scored a couple at the weekend, are really like, oh.
Jesus' price is great anyway.
He was never going anywhere from my draft. And
He's back in mine, by the way.
There's a 0.5 more and set for starts. What are you thinking, Odegaard versus Martinelli?
I'm not overly keen on either, I've got to say.
I agree with you because I think with Odegaard, the risk is Fabio Vieira, right?
I know. No, I wouldn't say risk. Like, I think Odegaard's captain now as well. So that adds some weight to it.
Would he sit deeper maybe? Alongside
No, I don't
Partey?
think so. They definitely won't be sitting alongside him, mate.
Is that official now?
No, let's not talk about it. Cut
Skip.
that, Nico.
Yeah, I completely forgot about that news.
Well, Martinelli's possible competition with Smith Rowe. Plus, we know...
Then Odegaard, Smith Rowe. Smith Rowe doesn't play off the left. Martinelli plays off the left.
We also know that they did try and buy Raphinha. So there is an interest to buy another attacking wide player. We know that. So, because a lot of people say, where was Saka going to play? And now I have a sneaky that Saka might evolve to become a central player where they use him
10.
More than 8. There was little giveaways towards the end of the last season, and a lot of it was enforced because they were chasing games at both Tottenham and at Newcastle. We ended up in very central areas, and I could see that because he's obviously a really good ball carrier, and he's improved his game like immensely over the last couple of years. He's a super player, Bukayo Saka, and I think if they'd have bought Raphinha, I could have seen Saka being used in a more central area. I think what you're more likely to see is Vieira and Odegaard ahead of a Xhaka, for example, or if they buy someone else, and then you've got Martinelli or Smith Rowe on the left. But I must say, at the moment, neither overly appealed to me. I know Adam Pritchard, our Arsenal correspondent, is quite high on Odegaard. We'll obviously speak about these options quite a lot during Correspondent Week, which will start 25th of July. I think Adam will answer that better than me. He would say Odegaard, but I need to find out why he thinks that. By the time we get there, he'll probably change his mind.
Harbour Boy, if you started the season with the template team, highest owned, and captained the most captained every week, and made one transfer a week, which was transferring in and out the most popular transfer, where would you finish at the end of the season?
It's difficult to equate because you've got things in there like wildcards and chips and stuff like that. And you can say, there's never a template. Maybe there will be this year. Last year, we had real kind of splits around game week 26 with kind of the wildcard group and the triple captaincy group. So once you get there, what's your decision? Because it wasn't clear what was going to be the kind of most popular route that people took. And it was a real split. So I'm not sure that would work, but if you remove those elements from it and you just followed the template all year, the answer is it depends what the template does, right? But if the template would to do as expected, and this year it looks like a far more locked template than normal, I would suggest that if you just follow it blindly, you'll probably finish in the top 100k.
I should do that.
Probably, yeah.
FPL,
but it's got to do well. It's got to do well.
Here's a question for me. Did I ever hypnotise you? No. Although that's a pod that we did for patrons only a while ago because I'd qualified as a hypnotist, and we just talked about hypnosis as a concept.
It's good.
But on an unrelated note, says Tom, could you hypnotise someone to shave their head whilst naked on a live stream without them realising? Conversation for patrons for last Friday, which we mentioned earlier. No, I don't think you could hypnotise someone to do that. I mean, you could, but I don't think it'd be that easy.
No.
Let's end with the last question of the show. It's coming in from Danny McDonald. With the 4.0 defenders, Williams and Phillips looking like they could start this season. You've got Pereira 4.5 at Fulham, but he's a midfielder.
And Pereira at Leicester,
Andres.
surely.
Yeah, I think 4.5.
Paulinho they've bought is a midfield
but
player.
they took Pereira from
sorry, yes,
Man United.
It's not officially done. It will happen.
I'm sure he's a midfielder.
He is a midfielder.
So 4.5 at Fulham. So the argument here is light at the back and money invested further forward.
Yeah, so what you're saying is, who do you want your bench players to be? Ideally, truthfully, one of the things that obviously gets spoken about every year, and is a reason we've not really spoken about it much ourselves, is 4.5 million rotators. You know, it's normally something like Ben White and Lewis Dunk. This is your best rotation. But arguably this year, if you were going to do that, you just go 2 4.0s. If it looks like Nico Williams, if you've got Nico Williams, let's say Nat Phillips, or be it Joe Rodon, or Nathan Patterson, or you mentioned even if Eric Bailly went to Fulham, for example, and you've got Andreas Pereira or Josh Da Silva's the one I really like at Brentford, that's the ideal. 2 4.0s, 4.5 midfielder, 4.0 goalkeeper. That's the ideal. What's the problem with that? We only picked 3 of the defenders. And at the moment, I think on the face of it, as soon as you start going Robertson versus Grealish, for example, or you start going Chilwell versus Martinelli, you come to the same conclusions about one of the defensive guys. So I don't think it's necessarily a case of what's best, because I might do it where I go, actually, sod it, pound for pound, I want 5 at the back, and therefore I'm looking at 2 4.5 million midfielders and a 4.5 million forward. Now, of course, effective, the value I'm then putting in my first 11 is far less than if obviously I went 2 4.0s defensively.
$1.5 million.
It's a million difference, basically.
Yeah, I don't think it's that big.
But then it's allowing me 5 potentially premium defenders rather than just 3. So I don't think it's a straightforward answer. It's circumstantial. I think at the moment I've got 5 at the back on mine. 2 4.5 million midfielders and a 4.5 million forward. But it could easily change. I know looking at them 4.0 defenders, and I've spoken about this, the closer it gets, probably the more people will lean that way. And you know these 4.0 guys have the potential to fly up in value and stuff, if they do quite well. But how often do you want to start Nico Williams at Forest? If Nat Phillips goes back to Bournemouth, how often do you want to start him? Are you actually really expecting stuff from these guys? So there's not a straightforward answer. It really comes down to personal preference. Ideally, the less money you've got on your bench, in theory, the stronger your team should be. But the more 4.0 defenders you go for, arguably the more it's blocking the best 11 you can get on the pitch. So
yeah,
you can spin the narrative either way.
The way to kind of look at it maybe is leave money in the bank to get to a better midfielder or a better forward in one transfer rather than start with someone and have to make 2 transfers to move.
But you don't want to muck about with those substitute positions.
No, but if you left a couple of million in the bank, you could get to a decent.
No one's leaving a couple of million in the bank, mate. People are going to struggle to leave 0.5 in the bank. And as I said, when it comes to game week 1, most people will spend 100 million.
Yeah, and I think most people will have at least 4 solid defenders. I think generally 4-4-2 is the most flexible starting formation.
But I think if we've got it obvious with Williams and Patterson, for example, then we should all look at drafts that are, okay, fine, it's Cancelo, Perisic, Trent, for example, would right now probably be the popular 3 if it went that way. Then you go Mendy in goal, still gives you the coverage of some form of Chelsea defensively, the 2 4.0s as subs, and then you look at what you do with 5 in midfield, I think. Or 3 up front.
Yeah.
Because the danger with the forward, the 4.5, whether it's going to be like Cameron Archer or Sam Greenwood or similar, is how many minutes are these guys going to get? It's not clear.
No. And that is a wrap for all the questions on the Q&A. Listeners, hope you enjoyed this week's Q&A, which is bringing forward the kind of Patreon content. Tomorrow, we mentioned, is Money in Football, which will be all about the takeover at Birmingham City.
Or lack of.
Or not. And what is happening there. I mean, they finished, 20th last season?
You know what?
It's very difficult.
It's kind of funny, but it's not funny.
It's not if you're a fan of the club.
It's very serious for Birmingham City fans.
But it also goes to kind of highlight the issue with mad hat owners that exists all over the place. Thursday, Tottenham. Friday, cheeky little quiz.
No, Wednesday's going to be
quiz. Thursday, Tottenham.
Ordinarily, we do Tottenham every Wednesday. We're going to do it on Thursday, so I can take in Tottenham's first pre-season friendly on the Wednesday. Wednesday, we're going to do a quiz. It's going to be an A to Z theme, which the patrons will know how that works. And it's going to be all kind of current Premier League stuff. So I think you can do quite
general
well
knowledge.
And we'll explain on Wednesday how that worked. And I'll do a first Ask James stream available to everyone will be on Friday.
Tidy. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you are listening to the podcast. If you do want to join our Patreon, then we'll be happy to have you. But of course, no obligations.
It's Barcelona today. It's the Berlin clubs tomorrow. AC Milan Wednesday. Royal Union Saint-Gilloise on Thursday. PSG and Mbappe on Friday.
Indeed. Stay safe. Ciao for now.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great week. Be nice to each other. Cue music, please, man child.